Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
All right, and Happy New Year. Once again, my name is Duck. I am your host tonight, and it is the beginning of 2023. It's hard to believe I've been doing this about a year now. So we have some new members, so welcome to our new members, Pam and Mark. And Pallavi's pretty new too. So anyway, tonight is a Lightroom workshop. And because it is the new year, I figure I'd give you a reminder that this is the time to go over your workflow. And if there are changes you've been waiting to do, some of the things that you've learned to incorporate into your workflow, here's a perfect time to do it. It's the beginning of the year, all right? What better time to start off fresh moving forward into the year, okay? Now, one of the things that I do every single year is I create a new folder for all my images for 2023 in this case. All right, so I figure because it's a new year, if you are not quite there with your image organization, I figure today's a perfect time to cover that. I'm going to explain how I handle, my organization. Take what you can from it, and adopt it to your needs. But like I said, this is a perfect opportunity to start fresh for the new year, nice and organized, okay? And I'm looking at you specifically, Gloria. She's probably rolling her eyes now. Okay, so unfortunately, I have not taken any photos for 2023. All right, so prior to starting, I just grabbed my camera really quickly and ran outside and took some random photos, okay? Just so that I have something in my camera with today's date rather than trying to, use last year's images and explain to you, this is how you're gonna do it for 2023. So I have my camera. And my camera card, all right. And the way I ingest my images is that I'll take the card and I'll plug it into a card reader. However way you want to handle your file transfer, it's entirely up to you. I find this method fairly easy for me. Some people prefer just plugging in their camera into the USB port, but I find that's a little bit slower than actually plugging in your memory card. Now, in this case, it's a CF card. Some of you may have cameras with a standard, memory card. And a lot of computers have regular card readers. You can just plug it in, but it's the same process whether you're using a secondary reader or the one that's in your camera. It's all the same thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug mine in, and typically what will happen is when you plug in your memory card, when you have Lightroom open, Lightroom typically tends to recognize when a memory card has been plugged in and will go by default into the import dialog box. I have that feature kind of like disabled on my system, all right? So if you notice that mine doesn't pop up into the import right away, it's because of that. All right, there's Brian. How are you, Brian? All right, so I have my card plugged in. what I'm going to do is going to go ahead and click on the import. All right. And it's going to populate everything. I got some holiday pictures here with the grandkids, some Christmas lights from the other day. And then I got some really crappy, like I said, some really crappy shots that I took just for today's example. Okay. All right. In this case, I just want to import the images for this year. So I'm going to uncheck all. All right. And I have these few images that I took today. I'm just going to take those. And if I just hit the space bar, it will automatically check everything that is selected. All right. So right now I have just this year's images. Okay. Now, for those of you who are new, or those of you who don't really know how to organize your images, let me go ahead and pause right here and explain a couple of things. Okay. For one, let me open up my file explorer. For one, Lightroom does not copy your images and put it into a dedicated, Lightroom folder. All right. The way Lightroom operates is it builds a address book that points to where you store your images. So that allows you to organize your images in any way that you want, as long as you tell Lightroom where those images are located. All right. By default, this is usually done through the ingest. But you can always add images to the Lightroom catalog after the fact. It's just easier, through the import dialog box. Okay. So to make things easy, all right, I tell people you want to be able to find your images regardless of what program you are operating under. Okay. I want to be able to find my images whether I'm using Lightroom or not, whether I'm using Photoshop or some other photo editing program. Okay. There are times where I need to go directly to the image file in order to send somebody that image file. So I don't want to be dependent on some piece of software to tell me where that image is. The other thing is, I don't want my images thrown into a folder with a bunch of other stuff. All right. And that tends to happen with the default operating system structures. For example, Windows has a pictures folder, and so does Mac. And they both have a documents folder, and they both have a video folder. All right. And these are operating system specific folders that they set up. Now, if you've ever looked into it, you'll find, for example, in the Windows folder, that the pictures folder is hidden deep, deep down. All right. So if we go here, let me expand this all the way. All right. If we look at the my file browser, all right, I have here a documents folder, a pictures folder, videos folder, and so on and so on. Okay. But if I were to look for this, you'll notice that it is not directly off your C drive. It's in an operating systems folder buried several layers down. So if I needed to find an image that I have stored in my pictures folder, I have to drill down well, first I have to know where to drill, but I have to drill down several folders in order to get to those files. I don't want to have to do that kind of juggling act all the time, okay? So what I've done is on the, well, for those of you who have a single drive, you'll do it in your C drive. I have an, additional internal drives, okay? But if we look here, you're going to notice that I have a My Photos folder, okay? My Photos folder. That one is specifically set up that all of my photos that I take go into this folder regardless of what it is, okay? Whether it's personal images, client images, whatever the case is, they all go into this folder. And that's the only thing that goes into this folder. It's just my images. That way I am not intermixing different types of content in these folders, okay? The other thing is, because it's directly off of my C drive, I don't have to go searching for this folder. All right, or actually in this case it's my E drive, okay? It's literally right off the root folder, okay? So if you have not set up your system in this way, I highly recommend you do so, simply because it keeps things organized and readily accessible for you as you progress into the new year, okay? Within my folder, my photos folder, I have set up a variety of folders depending on my needs, okay? You're going to notice that there are a few here that are they're preceded by a hashtag, okay? Hashtag miscellaneous, hashtag tethered. I have then below that with their underscore, all right? And then we have by date, okay? And of course, you'll see the last one here is 2022, all right? We will be setting up a 2023 folder today, all right? And I have client folders, and I have a couple other little ones, and the Lightroom one, this is where my Lightroom catalog resides, all right? So I keep my Lightroom catalog in my photos folder to keep everything compartmentalized. I don't need to go searching all over, hell in creation, trying to figure out where all my files are, okay? Hopefully that makes sense to you guys, all right? Okay, so what we're going to do today, if you have not set it up like this, I strongly suggest you do so, okay? You're going to set up a folder specifically for your photos, all right? In this case, it's already set up, so we're going to go to my photos folder. If you don't have one, I suggest you set one up. And if anybody has any trouble setting it up, just give me contact me, and I'll walk you through it, all right? But the easiest way is, in this case, as you're importing for the new year, we're just going to set up a folder for the new year, all right? Now, by default, I have it set up so that everything that I bring in defaults to the current year, all right? Those of you who've known me a while know that I like keeping things as simple as possible for myself and as automated as possible for myself in order for me not to make mistakes. When I'm doing a workflow for a client or for a personal project, I'm already juggling 1,000,001 different things. All right. If I can cut down on that mental juggling, the easier it is for me. And one of the things that I don't want to worry about is where my images are going. So the nice thing about Lightroom is that once you set it up, it remembers your previous settings. So in this case, once I set up my 2023 folder, it's going to import everything into that 2023 folder moving forward. All right. Okay. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Turns out I was doing this just today.
Okay.
And I got confused for a minute. Do I have to create the 2023 folder? I got Windows. So do I have to create the 2023 folder outside of Lightroom and then go to Lightroom and point to it, or can you do it within Lightroom?
Yes. No, either way works. All right. The thing is that Lightroom's not really going to recognize a folder that's created outside of it, outside of the Lightroom catalog. So typically, anything that I want Lightroom to handle, I will create within Lightroom. It just keeps things, again, that compartmentalized and readily accessible. Okay. And avoids problems. You know, the one thing that I don't want to do is, again, that mental juggling. All right. I don't want to have to come into Lightroom and say, okay, did I do that in Lightroom or did I do it outside of Lightroom? Do I have to, do some cleanup here, right? I'd rather avoid all that. So anything that I want Lightroom to handle, I will do right in Lightroom itself, okay? All right, so I have my images that I want to select. Actually, I'm going to unselect the first two because those are overexposed. I don't care about those. All right. And for those of you new to Lightroom, the dialog box, the way it's set up is everything on the left-hand side is where you're coming from. Everything on the right-hand side is where you're going to. All right. So in this case, I'm going to copy as DNG. That's my preferred method, or you can just do a copy. All right. And then as you can see, it's going to my internal secondary drive, which is my, I got a 6 terabyte storage drive for all my images. Okay. And we're just going to go down the line. The first one is file handling. Okay. You should have don't import suspected duplicates. That should be automatically checked.
Hey, Doug, you're covering everything up with your.
Oh, I am. Thank you. There we go. Okay.
That's better.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So we don't want to import suspected duplicates. Okay. So make sure that's on. All right. Your build previews should be standard. Okay. There really is no need, outside of that. Some of you with slower systems may consider looking into like a minimal. All right. And those of you who do a lot of sharing would probably be looking at the embed and sidecar. Okay. All right. If you are sending to automatically to a backup system on import, you'll want to make sure that make a second copy is selected, and then you'll have the option of letting the system know where you want that second copy to go to. Okay. And then the last one is add to collection. I don't add anything to a collection on the ingest. I'd rather do that manually later, so I don't do anything there. Okay. Next one is file renaming. I don't rename my files. I want to retain the original file number. So I don't do anything with this. You guys, if you rename, this is where you do it. Next one is apply during import. All right. We've discussed this in the past. There are certain things that I do to my images all the time. I've created presets for those. You can select that from here, you know, from your user inputs or presets to, you know, maybe something that comes standard with Lightroom, okay? My metadata, I want my copyright information. All right, those of you who are new, you will need to set this up for yourself. I'm not going to go into it right now simply because it's a little bit convoluted, all right? But I like to embed my copyright information into all my images right from the get-go. That way I don't have to worry about it when I'm exporting my images. It has all my metadata embedded, okay? The next part is important. If you haven't been doing this to date, here is a great opportunity to start off the new year utilizing a lot more of the features of Lightroom than you have in the past. Get into the habit of adding keywords to your images, okay? At this stage, they're going to be global keywords, keywords that apply to all the images that you are bringing in, okay? For example, these are my first images of the new year. So I'm just going to call New Year just to add something in there, okay? If you're at a location, you might want to put the location name. If it's for a client, you might want to put the client name, etc., okay? This makes going backwards into the past a lot easier when you need to find a specific image or a group of images, okay? Get into the habit of it, all right? Typically, they're going to be descriptors that describe the content of your images, all right? Last part's the important part, all right? Right now, as you can see, it's set to 2022, all right? By default, it's going to put all my images in there, and you can see right down here, I don't know if you guys can see it. I'll see if I can zoom it up, all right? There's my 2023 January 2nd folder, okay? Which obviously it's in the wrong place. We're gonna have to fix that, okay? All right, what I want to do is I want to go into a new folder. So I'm going to put into a subfolder. Oops. All right, make sure that you are in your root folder. In this case, my photos. Okay. I'm going to enter 2023. All right. One too many threes, okay? And my preference is that I organize all my imported images by date, okay? And I keep that date as part of my file structure moving forward. I just append it with a real world title that makes sense to me, okay? But you have a variety of options depending on your workflow. All right, by original folders, by date, or, you know, if you want to put everything into a single folder. All right, I organize everything by date. All right, and then of course you have a variety of date formats. Okay, the first nine will create a subfolder with the date, okay? So it'll say, all right, in this folder, I'm going to create a subfolder called 2022, and it's going to create a subfolder within that called, you know, in this case, because it's, again, it's reading last year's images, okay? But, you know, do you want it by month and day? Do you want it by year, month, and day? Do you want it just by the month? However way you want it, just remember, what you choose may create conflicts later on. So if you put everything into a folder called December and you don't differentiate between the days, it's you're going to take everything you shoot in December and dump it into that one folder. Okay, so be careful. All right. My preference is because everything's already going into a 2023 folder, I don't need to specify that. I just need to specify the new folder that's going to be created. Okay. Now, I like a little bit of redundancy here. All right. So if you notice, what I have selected is one that goes year, month, day, in a standard calendar format. Okay. Disregard that it says 2022. It'll actually say 2023 for the selected images. All right, but that's the format that I prefer. All right, and the reason I say it's redundant is because it's going to create a folder called 2022-12- whatever. All right, or in this case, 2023-1-2. Okay, and it's going to put that into a 2023 folder. All right, I want that redundancy because there are times when folders get accidentally moved. So when that happens, all I have to do is look at the folder name to know exactly where it belongs. All right, if it starts off with 2023 and I accidentally move it somewhere else, it stands out like a sore thumb. And I know exactly where to move it back to. So for that reason, I prefer a little redundancy. Okay. All right. Once that is selected, all you got to do now is just look down here and you're going to see, oh, wait a minute. I'm not in my, there we go. You're going to see a new folder called 2023. It's grayed out because there's nothing in it yet. Okay. And it's going to, right there is my new folder. All right, the 2023-01-02. And there are 7 of 9 images going into that folder. Okay. Now, you're going to see these 2 ghost folders. All right. And if you notice, they're reading 00. All right. The reason those 2 are coming up is because there are other images on this card from last year. So it's reading those. I just do not have them selected. Okay? So it's recognizing that there's other image files. All right? So it's going to automatically populate the list. All right? But to double check, you can see that it's actually not going to import anything because it's reading those 2 as 00. All right. So hopefully that avoids any confusion that you may be having right now. All right. I just want that 2023 folder started. Okay. Once that's done, you can go ahead and hit the import. And the beautiful thing about this, now that I have made my first import with the new settings, moving forward, it's going to remember that setting and I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Now, all right, and here we go. 7 photos were converted. Beautiful. All right. Now, I know right now we're on the cusp. You may have some images that are 2022 that you're still going to be importing. Just make sure that when you import, you look at, let me bring that import back. You look at your destination, all right? Look at your destination. There's my 2023, okay? If you go back and say, oh, I have some 2022 images to put in, all right? Then all you got to do is deselect into the subfolder, click on the 2023 and organize by date, and you're good to go. or I'm sorry, 2022, and you're good to go. Okay. In this case, we're just going to go into the 2023. All right. Any questions about any of that? Fairly straightforward. All right. Again, just take the opportunity of the new year, make yourself, that mental note that moving forward, you're going to keep yourself a little bit more organized. I've seen some systems that are just like ridiculously terrible. All right. Here's a great opportunity to straighten yourself out. Okay. Now, one of the things that I tell people is don't worry about what you did last year, the year before, the year prior. All right. If you need to change those, if you need to get those organized, you can always go back and organize them now that you have a new system in place. Okay. But you want to be organized moving forward. So might as well start off fresh. Right. All right. And that's pretty much it for prepping Lightroom for the new year. Okay. It really is.
I'm confused, Doc.
What?
I'm confused about this creating the actual 2023 folder. What I ran in today was, it looks like you created it as you imported something. Is
Yes.
that true?
Correct.
So if you just want to set it up, then that method doesn't work. Is that the way I'm understanding it? See, I wanted to just create the folder. I didn't have anything to put into it yet. I just was trying to get rid.
Okay.
So I saw this thing that said add folder, but
all right,
the folder didn't exist.
Okay, so here. So give me a second. Let me.
Okay.
All right. I just removed my folder from. Let me switch over. All right, I just removed my folder. Okay, if you look here, 2021, 2022, and then clients. All right, I don't have a 2023 folder. Okay, so we're going to assume that you've created a folder outside of Lightroom. Okay, and if we go to my my photos folder, all right, you'll see that here it is. I have a 2023 folder. Now, you guys actually just saw me put this together, all right? So you know how that came to be. But let's say your case, Brian, you said, okay, I'm going to use my File Explorer or my Finder window, and I'm going to create a 2023 folder. Okay.
But that's not what I was doing, Doc. Maybe was my confusion. Over on the left-hand side, where it says folders, there's an add folder or add subfolder.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I tried to use, thinking that was the way to do it.
Okay.
But that to me says that you have to have a pre-existing folder created outside of Lightroom for this thing to work, unless I miss something.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, all right. So in the catalog window, in the library window, all right, it only reacts to stuff that's on your system. If it's not in your system, it has a hard time, creating things, all right? One of the things that you can do is, well, I'm not going to complicate things. Right?
What I did by creating it outside of using Windows and add new folder and then coming in and adding the folder here, did I screw myself up?
No.
Or did I?
No, because that's how I would explain it to you. All right.
Okay.
You can't create folders in Lightroom unless you're moving something into that folder. Okay, so you need to have some image selected to move into a new folder, all right, in order to create one. All right, you can't just say, all right, I don't have any images, but I'm going to create a folder. All right, it has a hard time with that simply because it wants to track some kind of item when it creates a folder. All right, we don't want to create folders that are empty. Okay, so what I would
So-
suggest, yes.
Doug, so just to be clear, what you're saying is the left side is whatever is on our system, the right side is whatever we are doing within the Lightroom. When we edit the images, I guess the question is, when we edit the images, are they stored locally or are they on Lightroom?
All right, they're stored locally.
Okay.
Lightroom maintains a address book. All right. And it says, okay, in my little address book, I see that Pallavi has, a set of images from Christmas that are in this Christmas folder. Okay. So what Lightroom, the catalog does is it maintains an address to that, and it maintains a preview of all your raw files, okay? And it maintains a little recipe card saying these are all the edits that Pallavi did to those images, okay? All of that is kept in the Lightroom catalog, okay? All right. If you decide to change or move images outside of Lightroom, Lightroom's going to have a hard time finding those images. All right, so it's always suggested if you move anything, always move them through Lightroom. Okay. All right. So in this case, I need to set up my 2023 folder. All right. So we've created the new folder in the File Explorer. Okay. Where is it? Oh, but I closed it. Okay. So now I just got to add it to the system. All right. So all I'm going to do is go to the root folder, in this case, which is my photos folder. Okay. My photos folder. And I'm going to right click. Right. And about halfway down, synchronize folder. Okay. Synchronize folder. And it's going to do some scouting around. It's going to check out the system. I haven't done this in a while. I can just imagine what kind of mess my system is in. Give it a second.
Sorry, Doug, what are we doing here?
I'm adding a folder that I created outside of Lightroom.
Okay, the 23 folder.
Correct. All right.
Okay.
It's obviously it's easier to do it within Lightroom, right? But some people may have already set it up, all right? And we need to add it, all right? You can see how because I have so many images, it's going to be churning through here for a bit. Okay, this is why it's easier to do it, on the ingest than to do it, like through this method. All right, because it's gonna.
Sure, you got my photo set up as your top level. Could you just come in here and add a subfolder that in I forget what the term is, but because that thing I was emailed you about from earlier today, I did kind of that. Those images were sent to me in an email, and I moved them into the folder where I wanted them, and then which is part of my client work, and then I did something to add it. I don't think it was this thing, but maybe it was.
Yeah, you would either have to use the import dialog box to add the folder. Okay. Or in this case, just do a synchronized folder, right? Which is taking literally ridiculous amount of time. I should probably, let's see. All right, let's go. Yeah, my system's so big, it's churning forever. I wouldn't recommend this. Right.
Okay, Mike, if I may
You
ask
can
a
see
question
it's yeah.
about
Mhm.
screen. Since the pictures are stored locally, Lightroom is, as you said, it's really only storing editing data. It's not storing the pictures, correct?
Correct.
So a couple of times after I've had a bunch of different files of edits in Lightroom, it told me my Lightroom memory was full or getting full. How is that possible if it's not storing picture, if it's just storing little editing data?
Um,
Is that
because it does store JPEGs.
uh,
Okay. So the Lightroom catalog stores a preview JPEG because raw files they can't be viewed with a regular viewer. It would need some kind of raw processor in order to interpret that raw data. Okay. In order to do any kind of editing, your editor, it doesn't matter what editor you're using, okay? Whatever editor you're using for your raw files has to generate some kind of viewable image, whether it's a JPEG or in this case a TIFF file, okay, in order for it to visually display that raw file to you. All right. So what happens is when you bring in your raw files into Lightroom, Lightroom will generate a small JPEG or or a small TIFF file, all right, and save it in a catalog. Okay. That way.
that answer just made this entire class worth it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Uh, do me a favor before we close the session tonight. Remind me to touch on this for you because there are a few things you need to learn about those previews in order to free up some space for yourself. Okay. But I just want to, address this, import here for Brian. Okay. All right. So I tried doing the synchronize, but as you can see that my system was bogging up because I have a lot of images already in my catalog. It's going through entire thing and it's comparing everything. All right. So I don't want to do that hassle. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my import dialog box. Okay. And I know that that folder is already created. All right. So I'm going to go to my source up here, my source. All right. And in this case, I have mine here in my E drive, my photos folder. Okay. And you're going to see right there, there's the new folder 2023. I'm going to click on that. All right. And like I said, Lightroom needs an image to put into its catalog. All right. So if you have just an empty folder, it's going to have a hard time doing it. All right. So hopefully, even if you have to put something in there temporarily, throw something in there, an image that Lightroom will recognize. Okay. So now, because there are images in that folder, it's going to recognize it. All right. And it's going to go ahead and put it in. All right. In this case, what you need to do is just look over on the right hand side and make sure it's placing that folder properly. All right. All right. In this case, because we're just adding the folder, all right, we can just go ahead and add the folder and say import. And a few seconds, bam, 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 and we're back to where we were before. Okay. So there's a couple ways of doing it. All right. Like I said, the easiest is to do, a fresh import. All right. But if you have the folder already, you can still use the import dialog box, but just point to the folder and add the folder rather than copy images into a new folder, okay? Any questions? Hopefully I didn't confuse you guys on that one. No? Okay. All right, so let's address that little discussion with you, Mark, okay? So everything that you're seeing here, all these thumbnails, okay, they are a representation of the raw file, right? But these are not the raw files I'm looking at. What we're looking at here is a preview that Lightroom has built in order for me to be able to see the contents of that raw file, okay? When you import, all right, when you copy as DNG or copy or move or add, all right, one of the things that you're going to see right up here, let me have a sit down here for a second. What you're going to see here is a thing that says build previews, okay? Now, by default, oh, wait a minute. I'm in the wrong spot. There you go. Now you can see it, all right? Build previews, okay? You notice mine is set to a default of standard size, okay? And I kind of keep this as my default because a standard size preview is large enough for me to be able to edit from, but yet small enough so that it doesn't bog my system down, okay? Now, there are some options that are available to you here when you're in this. All right, the first one is minimal, all right, which, like the name says, it's the minimum amount of data for a workable preview for the system, okay? So what this means is it's able to generate all the thumbnails when you're looking at it in the grid view, okay? And it's going to load up into the develop module fairly quickly, but at that point, it's going to look pixelated, okay? So obviously you cannot work on a pixelated preview. So it takes the system a few seconds to generate a larger standard preview temporarily while you're editing it, okay? And then when you get out of the edit mode, it kind of dumps that standard preview and goes back to that minimal preview. Does that make sense? Okay, so it has a small preview. When it needs to, it's going to generate a larger one, and then when it's done using it, it's going to dump it, okay? But it takes a few seconds for that new preview to generate. And every time you open up that image to develop it, it's going to generate a new preview, all right? So you can imagine if you have several hundred images that you have to process through for a shoot, that can add up in time, all right? If you have a very fast system, it may not be that critical, but you will notice it, okay? So for that reason, I don't like the minimal view when I'm working on an image, okay? I prefer the standard view. A standard view is large enough to edit with, okay? So now when I go from the grid view to the develop view, there's no hesitation. It automatically, because the preview's large enough, I can go right into editing it without any lag. Okay. The next one up is a 1-to-1 preview, which, as you can tell, it's a ratio, 1-to-1 ratio. Whatever you shot in the raw form, that's the size preview that it's going to generate. Now is where you start realizing, oh my God, if I have a bunch of 1-to-1 size previews, that's going to take up a lot of space on my system because it's storing those previews in the Lightroom catalog. Okay. The thing is, once you're done editing, you don't need those 1-to-1 previews. All right. And one can argue that once you are done editing, you really don't need the standard size previews either. You can downscale to a minimal. All right. This is something that you can do after the fact. All right. You can go in and clean up your folder. All right. And basically tell Lightroom, you know what, I'm going to dump all of these, 1-to-1 previews or, large ones. Okay. Now, all right. I haven't done this in a while. I can't remember if I can find it, but there is a way of doing it. Previews, here we go. Previews, build standard size, or discard 1-to-1 previews. Okay. So if you have, and it's hard to know what your system has been building unless you look into your import dialog box. Okay. All right. Or you can say discard smart previews. All right. And this is something that you should do. Oh, I'm going to cancel that. If you find that your system has been fairly bloated. All right. Go backwards through your older images, especially the ones that you don't need. Okay. Now, you can go folder by folder. Okay. It's not a way I would recommend. Okay. But I also wouldn't do your entire collection all in one shot because, as you can tell, that's going to chew up a lot of resources. And if your system's not capable of handling it, you might bog it down to the point where, you break the system and you need to reboot. So I wouldn't suggest doing everything all in one shot. Okay. But in this case, I have my system set up by years. I can definitely go into a year folder. All right. And if you notice, when I click on my year here, all right, in the center, you're not seeing any thumbnails. Okay. Because everything is organized into subfolders underneath the year. Okay. So I would have to click on a subfolder in order to view what's in those folders. Okay. If I want to see everything in the year, all right, I will need to go up here where the little plus and minus is. And where the plus is, there's a little drop down arrow there. Okay.
You're in the way again.
Oh, I am. There we go. That might be better, right? Okay. This little down arrow where the plus is. Okay. If you click on that, down at the bottom, it says show photos in subfolder. As soon as you click that, everything in that subfolders will be visible. All right. And at this point, you can go ahead and dump all your previews, okay? Control A, where was it? Library, previews, discard smart previews. All right. Oh, actually, you know what? It might even do the whole entire system. I take that back. Like I said, I haven't done this in like forever. All right. But there. All dumped. Okay. So I don't know if you noticed it, but it was like 3,000 some odd smart previews. Okay. All right. So that's what I would suggest. All right. That you do. And you might find that it cleans up your system. All right. Does that answer your question, Mark? Awesome.
I guess, okay, so maybe it's just me. What is smart preview versus the previews that we are seeing? Because we are still seeing previews for the images, right?
Yeah, so smart previews are anything that's the larger sizes.
Okay.
So
And how are we able to, because I would think that all the images have, I mean, depending on the colors and so forth, but most of them would have standard sizes in context uh, of pictures in Lightroom, right? Or does the size change a lot because of what factors changes the size of the image, I guess?
the size of the preview,
Yes.
all right, Lightroom determines that. All right.
I would think that the size of the preview would be in context with the size of the image, right?
I don't know if I'm understanding you properly, but
So,
when you import an image, all right, or the raw file, Lightroom's going to generate the resources it needs in order to present those to you. All right. You have no control over that other than the size of the preview that you want to use, which we just went over.
cleared.
All right.
Okay.
But you can't say, you can't tell Lightroom I want it to be 3,000 by 2,000. That you can't do.
Okay.
Okay. You can do that on export, all right, if you need those specific sizes, but that's a different thing. All right. All right. While we are on the topic of cleanup, all right, now that we're in the holiday mode, the winter season, the hibernation mode, usually not a lot going on. Here's a great opportunity to go back maybe last year's or the year before and just do some housekeeping and get rid of images that you don't want. All right. So you may go back through let me just switch that back. I hate that full view. All right. You might go back and say, all right, I want to delete a bunch of unwanted images. Okay. So this is a great opportunity. You can see I've already cleaned this folder up. It only has 12 images. All right, so let's go 2021. That's already cleaned up. 2022, I know I haven't cleaned that up. All right, so here it is. Oh, that's client work. You might want to go in and say, okay, well, here's an event from, beginning of the year. All right. There are images here that I don't want. Okay. So for example, talking about organization. All right. Here are the images from a event that I photographed. It's a little social event, with a bunch of Santa Clauses. Okay. I took 80 some odd images. All right. Out of those, I separated 25 of those out of there saying, these are 25 images that I did not want. Okay. So I can go in and say, all right, I have the option here All right, will I ever be using these images? Okay, if the answer is yes, hold on to them. If the answer is no, chuck them, get rid of them. There's no need to hold on to them, right? Okay. Let's see. Oh, flying taco. All right, here we go. Okay. This is a from a photo shoot that I did. It's a portfolio piece. Okay. And this one, I haven't even segregated the two. All right. So this is a perfect example of a folder that can use some cleanup. Okay. So I have a bunch of images that I've flagged, all right, that were all used for the creation of the image. And then I have a bunch of unflagged images that they're all kind of like outtakes and seconds and just images that never made it into the final image. Okay. All of those, oh, except this one, that's my final. Right, all of these I can go ahead and select. So click on the first, shift click on the last. All right, that gives me 60 selected images out of 76. I can go ahead and hit the delete key. All right, and you're going to be given this option to either remove it from Lightroom, which is the default. All right. And what this does is it removes it out of the Lightroom catalog, but it saves the images on your hard drive. Okay. In this particular case, I could care less about these images. I'm just going to go ahead and say delete from disk. Okay. And it's going to go through and wipe everything out. They're no longer on my hard drive. And unless you have a backup, they're no longer anywhere else. Okay. But at this case, I didn't need any of those. All right. Because the project is already done. All right. I want to save my project files just in case I need to, recreate something. All right. Use it as reference, maybe use it for, a workshop, whatever the case is. I want to save these images that were used for the project. Those are going to go into my permanent record. And all I did was I got rid of all the fluff. Okay, make sense? So you can go down and, once you do this, if you stay on top of things, it becomes very easy, okay, to do your cleanup. All right. Here's one, 112 images. Okay. All right. Do you need all 112 images? Look at this image. What the heck is that? All right. I either had something covered or whatever. So, you don't need images like those cluttering up your system. All right. All they're doing is taking up wasting resources, taking up room on your system. Okay. So this is what I call monkey work. All right. This is something that if you have a laptop, you can put your laptop on your lap while you're listening to the news. All right. Or if you got your system set up in a room, throw some music on, spend a couple hours cleaning up your system. All right. Once you start going cross-eyed, do something else. Okay. Monkey work. All right. All right. So that's pretty much it for the new year. Get yourself set up with your new workflow system and periodically just go through your back catalog and thin it out. Get rid of that unwanted stuff. Oh, before I forget, the other thing you might want to do, go into your camera, all right, and make sure that the date and time has been properly advanced, okay? If you have your copyright information set by your camera, okay, you might want to go in and make sure that it's the proper date, okay? Everybody's camera's different, so I don't know. But if you just look through the menu, where is it? Somewhere in there will be. Somewhere in there will be, oh, date and time. Okay. And it looks like it updated properly. All right. And then your camera, I'd have to figure it out, but go in and make sure that your copyright metadata is up to date. Okay. All right. Any questions on anything that we covered?
You copy as a DNG file.
Yes.
You copy it. You use that instead of just a copy. What's the difference if you copy or copy as a DNG?
Okay. So copy as DNG. All right. So DNG is Adobe's digital negative format. It's their open source raw format. Okay. I'm a big, Adobe user. I share resources with other Adobe users. What it does is it converts from the Canon raw format to the Adobe raw format. That's all it does. Okay.
That makes sense.
It just
That
makes
makes a lot of
yeah,
sense.
it just makes
I've been doing it wrong for a while. Okay.
it's still a raw format. All right. It doesn't change the fact that it's a raw format. It changes it from Canon to Adobe. Okay, that's all it does. Okay.
Okay. I'll do that.
Is it needed? Do you need to? No, absolutely not. It's just something that I do. There are no benefits.
If Lightroom doesn't recognize the file extension, will it convert it to a DNG?
No.
Okay.
Lightroom needs to recognize the file in order to do any kind of manipulation. All right. If your Lightroom is up to date, it should have all the latest cameras. All right. I know usually it takes a couple months, for Lightroom to update to the latest models. So any new models coming out this past couple months, all right, it may take Adobe a little bit to update, but usually the manufacturers will send Adobe all the update information so that they're ahead of the pack when the new cameras roll out. So, but if you did not get a brand new spanky 2023 camera for Christmas, then you probably don't have to worry about it.
No, not yet. Too expensive for me.
Same here, no new cameras in my future. Okay. People ask me, are you going to switch over to mirrorless? I said, I have absolutely no reason to. None. Zip zilch. So.
Hey Doug, I have a quick story about my, my camera died right before I came
That's
down
right.
to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out my son-in-law is quite the, he cruises the pawn shops in Texas. And it turns out that he bought a D5300 about 2 years ago for $200.
Nice.
So I said, sell it to me and then you go find another one.
There you go. Yeah. So I like my 5DR2. I have two of them. Guess what I just found on Facebook Marketplace? A 5D Mark II over in Ansonia. So I'll be making that purchase soon. Don't tell the wife. Shh. Well, the nice thing about used gear is that it's fairly inexpensive. It's a Mark II. It's two models out of date, but I like the Mark II over the Mark III. For some reason I don't like the Mark III. I haven't tried the Mark IV, so I don't know. But anyway, so All right. Anybody got questions? We're good? All right.
Thanks a lot, Doc.
Thank you.
Okay. For some of you, I know this is probably like old hat stuff, but for people, Gloria, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. You're going to set up your system for the new year, right?
Yes, you have to come
Okay. All right.
to help me.
All right. I need you to be here next week for Photoshop. I'm going to be doing a portrait retouch. So
Okay.
I'm gonna give you some new tools to work
Okay.
with. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And those of
Let me
you,
say one thing. Let me say one thing. My name's Mark. It's my first time on this class. Enjoyed it. Thanks for explaining slow and steady. Really enjoyed. I learned a lot.
awesome.
Plan to come back every Monday. Great job.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And if you have any questions during the week, feel free to, shoot me an email and I'll try to help you out as best as I can. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Is
All right.
this broadcast usually 1 hour? Is that what usually? How long is this class?
It's usually 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah.
I have to hop off now. I apologize, but I'll be back next week.
Yeah, no problem. Sometimes we get into it. Sometimes it goes quick. So, all right, Mark, thank you very much. Enjoy
You too.
the new year. We'll see you next time. All right, awesome. Look at that. Our little group is growing. Gotta love it. All right. And from Rhode Island, no less. Rhode Island, he said, right? I think that's what he said. Yeah. Cool. All right. Anybody else got any questions? Otherwise, it's going to be a short session, so we're good.
Thanks a lot, Doc.
All right, guys. I really
Thank you,
appreciate you
Doug.
guys.
Great
And
class.
thank you. And we will see you all next week.
Next week. Thank you, Doc.
All righty, dear. Take care.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.